Now, Michigan Reimagined with Chris Buck.
So employment has been front and center over the last few years. Pre-pandemic, unemployment was exceedingly low and employers are clamoring for talent. Then the pandemic spiked unemployment numbers, and now as things reopen from the pandemic, employers are desperately trying to find talent again. Here to discuss what we're seeing and to deliver tips and strategy is an owner of DS Employment Services, Daniel Shinaver. Welcome to the show, Daniel.
Thank you, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, as always.
All right. Well, welcome back. That's right. You are a previous guest, and I'm looking forward to hearing how things are going these days. So tell us a little bit first about DS Employment Services. Generally, what types of services do you provide?
All right. Well, with DS Employment Services, we pride ourselves on finding only full-time quality candidates for employers for small to mid-sized businesses. Our focus is always permanent and full-time employment, individual employment counseling, placement, development. And we provide things like resume development, life skill development, basic management theory, and basic HR employment retention strategies for employers. So our pride on that is that we take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and we do something that nobody else quite wants to do, which is take that time and effort to find those candidates. So even if we're not able to do business with an employer, we do believe in helping the employer out. So I can't tell you how many times I couldn't get a contract with an employer, and that was okay. But I still took their information, pushed it on my social media, still put it out there in my resources into the community and help them out regardless. Because that's what I do with DS Employment Services. I help people, even if we don't always do business together.
Right on. So when did you get started? How long have you been in business?
We got started in December of 2019. Originally in 2018, there was another partnership. There was a company, and we decided to dissolve in 2019. I decided to head out on my own. My background, I come from the nonprofit world. My career started in about 2006. When I went to work for a local nonprofit, and at that point, I was an employment developer for the community. So my goal was helping people that were low income, people that were disabled, people that were trying to get housing, trying to get out of their situation. And what I was finding was that by spending quality time in development, case management time in development, my employment retention was getting very high with the employers because they had somebody with a background in business, somebody with a background in human resources who could explain things to them that just didn't make sense normally. And so I could help these individuals find gainful employment. And eventually, after that point in time, after the contract came to an end, after about 12 years, I decided to form a business and keep that model going. So,
all right. And so the contracts that you mentioned are with employers. So basically, yes. Your clients are the employers that are looking for talent.
Absolutely.
And then you've got either a pipeline or a portfolio of people that are looking for work, or you know how to find them.
I know how to find them.
Wonderful. Okay. So last 16 months must have been challenging, to say the least. So, with so many businesses shut down or working remotely, were job opportunities really reduced during the pandemic?
It was interesting. 2020 was a very damaging year for so many small businesses. I stopped counting at about 60 businesses that I knew personally that just shut their doors. And for me as a business, I was lucky in that I had a lean business model, so I was able to survive relatively easily. But one of the things I noticed was that during that time frame, the businesses that were closing their doors, the businesses I was losing contracts with, they had no choice in the matter. And then 2021 came along, so those who survived are now in the exact opposite role. So the employment opportunities were devastated in 2020, but in 2021, they're everywhere. The issue now is just finding those quality candidates and being able to retain them and being able to attract them and make certain that they're going to be happy. So that's kind of what I see right now is just the businesses that survived are desperate for employees, and I'm there to help.
Got it. Okay. So during 2020, when, clearly there probably weren't many employers looking for additional workforce. Right. And so, these people that that are looking for jobs, what kind of advice would you give people who are looking for jobs?
Well, the biggest advice I give to people that are looking for jobs is to be flexible. Is to look at your skill set, is to sit down with a non-college oriented career counselor, somebody who gets you out of that mindset, who can teach you and look at you and say, hey, have you considered taking your skill set and going in a different direction? Being flexible like that is the biggest advice I can tell employers and potential employees, because you may find somebody with a wide background who has never considered going into a different career field. But what's the worst that could happen? Somebody could say no and not give them a chance. Everybody was given a chance at some point in time by somebody. So why not reach out, be flexible, try that? So that's my advice right now, my quick advice to people. Just sit down with somebody who's knowledgeable, who's flexible, who's adaptable, who can show them their own self-worth and help guide them in a direction that they might not have necessarily thought about.
Okay. So at this recording, which is early June of 2021, if you're following the news and you talk to any people on the street that are business owners, it seems as though everyone's really enthusiastic about everything reopening, right? So you got indoor capacities are being raised, you got outdoor events are happening again, offices are allowed to, be back in the office with a full workforce. But now I'm hearing that people are really clamoring for talent because there aren't enough workers to actually go back and do the work that they're finally allowed to do. How do you think there'd be a pent up demand and there'd be people that have been sitting on their hands for 16 months looking for work? I can't reconcile that.
And that's where it's interesting. There's a huge untapped resource of talent out there. The problem is, and it's just like we were discussing earlier before we were on the air, that they're actually being paid more to stay at home right now than to actually work. And when you look at the numbers, and if you don't mind if I quote some numbers,
no, absolutely, bring it.
In 2020, it started out with a federal pandemic unemployment assistance. They were paying people $600 a week in addition to the maximum allotted amount with the state of $362. So it was $962 a week to stay at home. They've since reduced that. The federal side has reduced that down to $300, but people are still eligible for $362 per week stateside. So that's $662 per week. That comes out to roughly, where's my numbers at here, $2,648 per month, or $31,776 a year. If you break that down hourly, that's $16.55 an hour to stay at home right now. So if you're an employee that's always used to making $10 to $15 an hour, where's the incentive to go back to work? You're going to enjoy this beautiful spring weather, this summer that's coming up, and you're going to draw a paycheck. I know so many people that have always been in that category, but they don't want to work because they can get paid to stay at home safely with their family. So that's the issue. And I'm not quite certain how to get around that other than to incentivize and to create opportunities that are non-traditional for employers.
I've heard that certain states have really just put the clamp down and said, no additional money on top of our standard unemployment, and I may have it wrong. That's why I'm not an expert. That's why I brought someone like you in.
Thank you.
I think it was even the state of Montana just said we're suspending unemployment. If you want any money, you need to get back to work. And maybe it wasn't as I'm sure as laced up as what I just said. But long story short is, we need to open the economy. We need to get people back to work. We're not going to pay you $16.50 to sit on your couch. And I'm sure every person has their own story. I'm not saying that everybody who isn't choosing to get into the workforce is inherently, lazy or working the system. But you would think that more people would say, I just feel more productive as a person on the planet earning my own money versus taking a handout.
Well, and I see that more in like the skilled trade side where people say, I don't want a paycheck. I want to be independent. I want to make my own money. And they're being paid decent wages. And don't get me wrong, I understand on the small business side that they can only afford so much. And that happens. So those states that are reopening their doors like that, their economy is booming. People are going back to work because that's what they're used to making.
Right.
But when you incentivize not going back to work, then unfortunately you have what you have. So what I've learned is over the course of 2021, I've learned that so many employers are finding non-traditional ways, non-financial incentives to bring people on board. So a good example of that, I was at a gas station yesterday. I looked on the window and they had $18 an hour hiring, every 2 weeks a $100 bonus gift card. And I thought, wow. So not only am I getting $200 additional each month, but I'm being paid a decent wage. I'm seeing retailers, I'm seeing restaurants, for instance, turn around and giving their employees either a full discount on their meals or things like 75% off or 50% off on their immediate family. So they're finding these non-financial incentives, non-cash incentives, or non-traditional incentives to retain people. And that's how they're bringing these quality employees on board. Because people don't leave companies, people leave people. So if they have a negative environment where people feel that they're not being paid appropriately or they're not being treated appropriately, they will take a pay cut to go work somewhere else where they're treated well and they enjoy the work and it's flexible. So hopefully that kind of answers it a little bit.
Absolutely. And you touched on something that I've been thinking about is, one way to not necessarily need a big, more new workforce is to retain the workforce you already have, right?
Absolutely.
Prevent turnover and stay competitive so that, So you rattled off just a couple of things that can help, get the hooks in an employee. What do you counsel that? I mean, is that part of your direct services to these employers to help them with strategies to retain the people they have?
Absolutely. If I feel that I can't help an employer because they can't get over the wage gap or they can't get over that financial side of the house, I understand it. So what I'll do is I'll sit down with them and I'll show them strategies. I'll give them ideas that maybe other companies have done successfully that are in a similar sector. So that way they can look at that, because honestly, they have to think that way. Our culture is changing, our work environment is changing, the business environment changes every 5 to 10 years. So they need to be adaptable to their hiring process, to their retention process. If they're not adaptable and flexible and understandable, people are going to go somewhere else that has that flexibility and understanding.
Right. Okay. And do you find that they take you up on that? I mean, do employers seek out that kind of advice?
I don't think initially they seek it out, but I always get as much information as possible before I have a meeting with them. So that way I can go into the meeting, because I value honesty. So if I can't help an employer, I will straight up let them know, but I'll also provide them with possible ideas or solutions to help them out in the future. And I do that for free because I believe in helping people out. So some employers will take me up on that, and some people thank me for that because I'm taking time out of my day to help them. And it's just all a part of giving back to the community, helping the Lansing area out, helping the Mid-Michigan area out, and just seeing these employers survive. They've already survived horrible circumstances. I want to see them survive going into the future.
Right. My experience with small businesses, you do get a lot of times when, they get fed up with employees' performance or behaviors. And my question to them is, well, why did you hire them? And a lot of times the answer is, well, they were great when they first started. And now that we're a year in or 18 months in or 3 years in, they're just not that good anymore. And so my question back is, how did that happen? I mean, did they forget how to be good, or are they not motivated to do the best job they can be, or have promises been broken? Question. Have they, because so often they say they were great and now they're not good. And it's like, well, then culture, unless something significant happened outside of work,
right?
Where they had some, a life change that maybe distracted them. Sometimes the erosion of their morale and productivity comes from the circumstances that they're in.
Well, and that's absolutely true. And those employees may have been great in the beginning, but somewhere along the line, that was lost in translation. Something happened. And I'm not here to point a finger at anybody or anything like that. But what I've seen is the majority of the time, situations have happened in a work environment that have caused people to feel that way. They're either overworked, overstressed, underappreciated. Something has happened.
Right.
And when that happens, employers are turning around and going, what happened? This guy was great. This woman was great. And now they're leaving me, or they're unhappy, or they're unsatisfied. And that's where that moment has to be addressed, and they have to take a step back and look and say, what are we doing to incentivize these people? Do I have an open door policy? Do I know who they are? Have I inquired about their weekend? Do I make it a point to personally talk to them every day? They have to look at those little things to develop that sense of loyalty and hard work and passion for what they're doing. And if they don't do that and they're just running around busy, that person will eventually get burned out and leave. And the employer's left going, what happened to my quality employee?
Right. Now, you've told me before about your passion for maybe non-traditional candidates. Yes. I'm not sure if that's the right phrase for that, but talk a little bit more about that. You believe that there's a lot of people out there that employers aren't giving a fair shake to, and you really try to advocate for them and find places for them. What kinds of people are we talking about?
It's interesting you bring that up. And the reason I say that is because there are so many untapped resources out there that people just are not aware of. For instance, you have returning citizens, people that have been long-term incarcerated. They've been away for 20, 30 years. They come out, they're getting vocational training from the Department of Corrections. So they're coming out with that pride and that ownership of saying, I now have certificates, I now have licenses. I just need an opportunity. And what I've seen is the people that go through that training are people that have lost everything. So when an employer comes along and treats them well and gives them a good living wage and has their back, that employee will turn around and do anything that employer wants, and they will work so hard for them. Then I've seen that also with our disabled veterans, or just our regular veterans who are non-disabled that are coming out. They get into the service trades, and the service trades are very similar to the mindset that you find in the military. So you have these individuals coming out who are used to hard work, who are used to having people bark orders at them, who are used to being in the hot sun all day. And then you have an employer that comes along and says, let's ease that burden of your job search. We'll pay you $28 an hour. We'll pay you $35 an hour to help take care of your young wife or your kid, and we'll treat you well. And those employees turn out to be fantastic for them. But it's just a matter of being able to find them. And so I always counsel companies that want to move in that direction, specialize in something, make it well known, advertise that these are the individuals you want to help out, and that creates a pipeline. Because I guarantee if you have an employer out there that says, we love to hire people that have been incarcerated, we love to hire our veterans, that will travel through the veteran organizations, that will travel through the community pipelines, that will draw in quality people. So that's what I look at. I try to bring those people on board, make employers aware of those resources, and make sure that they have a good pipeline.
Well, final thoughts. So some of these folks that are coming back into the workforce, how do you help kind of coach them on the types of employment that might be best suited for them based on their skills and abilities?
Yes. Yep. What I do first and foremost is I'll sit down with them. Typically, my sit-down meetings are anywhere from 4 to 6 hours. And during that time frame, I get a chance to know that individual, to know their skill set, to know who they are. And then I can start developing thoughtways and pathways and go, hey, have you thought about this? Or, hey, I know these employers are looking for somebody like this. Here's how you get it paid for. Here's what they're willing to do.
Right.
So I help develop that out with them. And it's amazing that they can't seem to find people that want to help them do that. And to me, it's just natural. I want to help out, so I provide that information. So it makes me feel good at the end of the day to look and say, I helped this person get a career pathway that they might not normally have done so.
Right on. Well, Daniel, I appreciate it. Time flew. Can you remind everyone of how they can get in touch with you to learn more about your services?
Yep, they can reach out to me on my website, www.dsemploymentservices.com. They can also find me on Facebook, or if they want to talk to me personally, they can reach out to me at 517-927-4680. And I'm always available to talk to somebody or help them out.
Fantastic. We've had Daniel Shinaver from DS Employment Services here today. Thanks very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.